Yes, I mean, he seems to have needed 3 orgasms a day. He doesn't seem to have had straight sex with people. It's all about oral sex or massages.
Let's go back to Jeffrey Epstein. You don't believe it was a suicide, because that's the official version of events, right? That he killed himself in prison.
And one of the claims in the book, in the first 60,000 copies of the book that went out before we were asked to change it, was that Melania actually had a relation, well, had sex with Epstein before she met Trump.
Let's start with Jeffrey Epstein, because that's very much in the news at the moment. Let's just start by discussing who he is or who he was. Tell us a bit about him as a person.
Well, Jeffrey Epstein was, I suppose, a financier who made his money, no one quite knows how, it was huge sums of money, was given a huge townhouse in Manhattan by a man called Lex Wexner. Seems to have had links with the intelligence services and with Mossad. Was very close to Robert Maxwell, and then clearly to Robert Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, subsequently. And he seems to be, just a player in Manhattan and elsewhere. Very keen to sort of build a network promoting science. He collected people, I suppose, and he used his wealth to push to basically social climb. But he is a mystery figure, because a bit like a sort of figure like Great Gatsby, because he comes from nowhere. He's a failed high school teacher who suddenly has large sums of money and is moving with the elites of the world. And then, of course, people are drawn into him. Bill Gates becomes close to him, Stephen Hawkins, and, of course, Prince Andrew. And the relationship with Prince Andrew is Prince Andrew gives him status and respectability. What Epstein gives to Andrew is someone who pays off his ex-wife's debts, someone who gives him some useful contacts too through his work as a special trade envoy, and also supplies women. And there's some suspicion that Epstein was supplying women to various people. He was blackmailing people. He was filming them in his houses, in effect in honey traps, and then forcing them to trade information with him. And that's certainly what I found with my research, that there's an awful lot of compromat that's been collected on Andrew. And part of that compromat comes from Epstein, who was trading in this information.
So when you say, you mean compromising material, that's what you're saying?
Yes,
okay.
And it could be sexual, it could be filming of him in bed with someone, or it could be information that he's inadvertently told him, which he shouldn't have done.
But Jeffrey Epstein obviously is widely known now to have been trafficking women in some sense, supplying women for brief sexual encounters to a lot of men, maybe very senior men still around in the establishment. But he himself, and it comes through in your book, seems to have had a voracious sexual appetite. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I mean, he seems to have needed 3 orgasms a day. He doesn't seem to have had straight sex with people. It's all about oral sex or massages. He clearly got a sort of voyeuristic thrill for seeing young girls. It's clearly a control mechanism, I think. I mean, you may be able to tell me more about this, but it seemed to me he never seems to establish any close relationship with anyone. And what was interesting is when Ghislaine Maxwell was given her testimony recently is that there wasn't really much of a sexual relationship between the two of them. And she would have liked one, and certainly a much stronger emotional relationship. And in some ways he was very similar to Andrew, because Andrew also had a very voracious sexual appetite, inability to really sustain relationships with anyone, constant need for gratification, moving on, totally unsatisfied with anything. And again, a sort of power and control game.
But you make also allegations which have hit the headlines to do with Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein. And this is a very hot topic because many Trump supporters and Trump himself are trying to distance Trump's reputation from being too entangled with the toxic reputation of Epstein. Could you say a bit about that?
Well, Trump has sued, for example, News Corp, who the Wall Street Journal published the birthday card showing a rather sort of graphic picture. He's wanted to distance himself from Epstein and indeed from Andrew for some time, though there's plenty of photographic evidence, apart from anything else, of the two of them being close. And
Trump and Epstein?
Trump and Epstein, Trump and Andrew.
Okay.
And I've certainly got lots of evidence of that. Trump is also very protective of his wife, Melania, and he has threatened to sue anyone who suggests, for example, that Epstein knew Melania before Trump did. And one of the claims in the book, in the first 60,000 copies of the book that went out before we were asked to change it, was that Melania actually had a relation, well, had sex with Epstein before she met Trump. Trump doesn't like that. I mean, he's forced Michael Wolff, who's a well-known American writer, to rein back on that claim. He's attacked James Carville for saying the same, and he required my publishers to make the change in my book. Though my information came not from Michael Wolff, but from another source who'd also interviewed Epstein. Now, these could be boastful claims by Epstein, but according to my source, he wasn't in a boastful mood when he talked about this. It was very matter of fact. This was for a documentary. It was a serious program, and he was just telling the truth.
Let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. Am I pronouncing the name correctly?
I think so. I've never quite worked it out myself.
Okay, right. So she was actually girlfriend and boyfriend with Jeffrey Epstein, but you're saying that actually, although they hung out a lot together and were quite close, it wasn't a sexual relationship. But I'm not clear about that bit.
I think that it started off as a sexual relationship. I think after that she became really his sort of head sort of number PA in effect, organising things. Clearly she was instrumental in trafficking some of these girls. She was the person who lured them in, and they liked her accent, the fact that she was well spoken and well educated. But I think what's also interesting is she had a relationship on and off with Andrew. I was told in 1997 about the time that Diana died, and also in 2001, and there's quite a lot of evidence of them being seen together and holding hands and stuff. But I was told that Epstein got a thrill from the fact that his girlfriend was also sleeping with his buddy. And so there's a very strange sort of dynamic there. I mean, not quite a threesome, but someone who got a thrill from almost putting out his girlfriend to his friends.
But there also seems to be an interesting pattern to a psychiatrist, this hypersexuality you're alleging in Trump, Epstein, and Andrew. It seems like almost a syndrome where a lot of senior men in politics have this voracious desire to get laid a lot. Were you struck by that?
Well, it's a new area for me. It's a new area for me. I mean, clearly with Guy Burgess, the spy, he was also very hypersexual, and blackmail was used in how he operated as an intelligence agent. But yes, I mean, I suppose it shouldn't surprise us. Rich, powerful men can afford to sleep with whoever they want to sleep, in effect. And they have presumably these drives that take them to the top in terms of their careers, and maybe are also very strong sexual drives. I don't know, but as a biographer, I've certainly noticed that. So yeah, I think they're very similar. I mean, Trump was moving in the same circles. It was a way of showing off. I have a beautiful girl on my arm. I can lay anyone I want. I can get anyone I want. And the fact was, I mean, he was running a model agency. Epstein was very close to Jean-Luc Brunel, who ran a model agency, and that was the person who supplied the girls. And again, these were pretty vulnerable people, often who didn't speak English. They were Russian girls brought across thinking that they were going to make it in New York, and actually just being farmed out to these rich and powerful men. So in some ways it doesn't surprise me. I mean, ever since time began, rich, powerful men have been able to have their choice of beautiful women.
But the role of Ghislaine Maxwell in this women trafficking thing is quite important, because we know from the history of when men do this sort of thing, they do need a woman in a way to bring about the trust in other women, if you see what I mean. So the role of a woman, you can go back to as far back as its very grim analogy or parallel with the Moors murderers.
Yep.
With Mara Hindley. She was
Yep.
crucial in luring children because she was a woman.
Yep.
So there's the role of the woman in this is really quite kind of important. In other words, it's almost as if Jeffrey Epstein may not have been able to get away with it if he didn't have this counterpart.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, she gave respectability. She created trust. Women trust other women. They don't expect them to behave like this. And we've seen it with one or two other cases. I mean, think of Soham murders as well, with Maxine and Ian. So, yeah, I mean, and there's an interesting trend too that Andrew was not actually someone who was he liked having women brought to him on a plate, which of course is what Ghislaine and Epstein did. And before that, he had a woman called Marla Lindsay who provided, in effect, girlfriends for him. And she would put on dinner parties, and pretty girls would be invited, and he would be left to sort of get on with them. And that's a pattern actually that happened with his father, who's the subject of my next book.
Let's go back to Ghislaine Maxwell, though, because again, a lot of conspiracy theories swirling around the fact she's been moved to a nicer prison, and that she's playing a role in whitewashing that whole history. So she's quite a powerful person. She has cards to play, doesn't she? That's what the theory is about what's going on at the moment.
Yes, I mean, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I mean, I think it's pretty broad. It's pretty evident to see what's happening. I mean, Trump basically has been accused of being involved. He's looking for a way out. Ghislaine is looking for a way out of prison to a slightly cushier number and a pardon. And so she is doing the bidding. We know that Trump is in these files. We know that they've been weeded. We know from people like Pam Bondi and others. I mean, they've seen the material. And we know, I know from my own research, he's all over this story. But he clearly wants to dry clean this, to censor the whole thing. And people are going along with that. So is Ghislaine Maxwell. This is her get out of jail free card. So she's saying, Trump is a gentleman, he treats women beautifully, which we know is not the case. I just know from my own research, he has a very disparaging view of women. He talks about them, as objectifies them. But clearly she is going to throw out a few low-hanging fruit for the MAGA supporters who feel that there should be more openness. I don't think it'll be enough, but and she, as you say, has been moved to a much more lenient prison, not interestingly enough from Florida closer to Washington so she can testify, but actually further away to Texas. And I think what we will see is that she will disappear into the prison system. They will say, we are worried about her security, we've moved her to another prison for her own safety. No one will know where that prison is. And in fact, she's not in the prison system. She's been put on a plane to the Caribbean or wherever she's going to be sent. And she will have done her bit. She will have got Trump, he thinks, off the hook.
So what other allegations, in your opinion, given you know the story very well, is she rowing back from? What is she trying to say now that is different from what you know to be the truth?
Well, she's a proven liar. She lied all the way through her court case. I don't think you can believe anything she says. And we're going to get victims coming forward. And we've already had Virginia Giuffre's family come forward and saying this is all complete rubbish. No, she's not going to name any big names. Everyone expects various names, and names to be mentioned of people like Bill Clinton and Bill Gates. I don't think we're going to get any of those names. She's not going to dish the dirt on Andrew, who I think she remains very loyal to. She'll throw out a few low-level people, and that's it. She won't need to say very much. But I don't think you can go through her testimony, and it's all complete rubbish. She's been interviewed by Trump's own lawyer. She kind of knows which side her bread is buttered on. So I don't think anyone serious believes. It's not conspiracy theory, it's just fact. She's been lying.
But you also allege that Ghislaine Maxwell and Andrew had an affair of some description, right? That's also in your book.
Yes. As I say, in 1997 and then again in 2001. And this is from a very close friend of hers. But we have sightings of them in restaurants. They go out to things together as a date. They go into weddings together, for example. They see each other a lot in those two periods of 1997 and 2001.
Let's go back to Jeffrey Epstein. You don't believe it was a suicide, because that's the official version of events, right? That he killed himself in prison.
Yes, well, I think I lay out the anomalies in the case, and people can draw their own conclusions, but people increasingly are drawing a conclusion that it wasn't suicide. And the evidence I provide is the fact the cameras were switched off at the relevant time when he committed suicide. The two guards who fell asleep at the same time, strangely, and didn't mount their checks. That the person who should have been in the cell with him for suicide watch was removed. We also have all sorts of people who knew him, for example, his lawyers, who are saying this is ridiculous. He felt he was going to get out of prison. He was not the sort of person to commit suicide. This is actually how they get rid of people. There was testimony the other day from someone who was in the correctional facility saying it's impossible to commit suicide there. They don't make it easy. And then we have Michael Baton, who is the coroner, who was brought in by Mark Epstein, Epstein's brother, to do a separate autopsy. The official one hasn't been made public for some reason. The body was removed without anyone being able to look at it. They didn't go through any of the proper procedures. And Baton has said these are marks of strangulation and homicide rather than marks of suicide. So,
you mean hanging himself? He didn't hang himself then?
He got
strangled?
He got strangled.
But the official version is he hung himself in the cell?
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, the evidence is that it would have been impossible with the sheets and the heights and everything else. And then, of course, we have the slight cover-up. The authorities have gone out and saying, well, we have this film of the thing and no one appeared there. And then we find that some appearance has been taken out of the film. The film is not actually of his doorway. There actually then is film of someone appearing in the middle of the night. Who isn't accounted for, and the suspicion is that that someone inside the correctional facility was basically asked to do this. And actually, Maxwell herself, I think, has said in her testimony that you don't need to pay people very much within these correctional facilities to kill someone. So I think there's quite a lot of evidence, and indeed I talked to one of Epstein's employees who said that he says, I mean, I didn't put this in the book, but he says that Trump was behind the murder.
Okay, so I was going to mean my next question, which is who is it, and in whose interest is it to polish Jeffrey Epstein off? And you're alleging it's Donald Trump.
Well, that's what was claimed by the employee, and I don't know what evidence they have to go on that. But clearly, Trump had a motive. I mean, if he was as deeply involved in everything as everyone suspects, then the last thing he wants is Epstein testifying. And we have seen a series of people dying. A lot of the victims have committed suicide. Most recently, Virginia Giuffre. She may have been pushed to it. I mean, just through the trauma that she's gone through and just had enough. And she clearly had some problems in her own marriage. But there are suspicions with some of the other people who've killed themselves that there was a kill list. Now, I'm not going there. That is conspiracy theory. But there are questions about the number of people who've died in unexplained circumstances. So I mean, Epstein was dangerous. Ghislaine has never really spoken. The trial was very much focused on some pre-ordained sort of matters. So actually, everyone was waiting to see what she would say because she's never really been properly interviewed. The idea is that there was no one else involved in the sex trafficking, no one else benefited from it, which is ridiculous. I mean, no other names have been brought up in the trial. And I think what's happened is, there have been so many NDAs signed, deals done, sealed depositions, that, it's been very difficult for anyone to get any evidence. Epstein himself was paying off people, or people were claiming the Fifth Amendment.
So I don't quite understand this bit of the story, which is how he gets arrested in the first place, because the bit I don't understand is, according to your book and other sources, the man had homes and houses and even his own private island all around the world. So, but as I understand it, he flew back to the US and was arrested at the airport. So why did he do that? Why did he walk into the arms of the authorities?
I don't think he realised he was going to be arrested.
Okay, but wasn't that a bit foolish? This is the benefit of hindsight.
I think he thought he got away with it so far. He'd had all these lawyers who had, I mean, there were two episodes. One is the episode in 2008 with basically the sort of the deal that was done, organised by Alan Dershowitz, so that he was only involved in not sex trafficking, but I think procuring. And he did a year in an open facility. He actually went to his office each day, and he just slept there at night.
So
there were two
based
occasions.
on that, he thought, worst that can happen is that.
Exactly,
maybe.
exactly. Okay. So he knew there had been clearly articles and people were moving in, but he assumed he was fine.
Okay.
And he basically had the state authorities under his thumb.
Okay.
But this was a federal thing.
Yeah. So apologies for challenging you here a little bit.
Sure, no, it's good.
That would be one theory as to why he might kill himself, which is that he thought, hang on a second, I arrived thinking it's all going to be okay, and now I find myself in prison, and it's not going the way I thought it was going to go, and maybe he got a bit hopeless in that situation, and maybe he had an intuition that maybe he was going to end up serving a lot of prison time.
But
Maybe.
This was the whole beginning of the whole process. So
Yeah.
it had a long way to go.
Oh, okay.
Before
Okay.
he hadn't.
That's
even,
a good counter-argument.
He hadn't even been charged or anything. So this.
And he had these hotshot lawyers.
And he had, and Spencer Cooven is, a lawyer for one of the victims, is actually gone on the record saying this just wasn't the man. He knew him pretty well. This is not a guy who commits suicide.
Yes.
He's a fighter.
Yes.
So I agree. I mean, if there was no, he got charged, he was being sent down, he was going down for 20 years like Ghislaine, then possibly, but that was a long way off.
As a psychiatrist, I mean, I don't want to get involved too much in being able to speak definitively about the mental state of people who do end up killing themselves. But I would say as a psychiatrist, I have a lot of experience of that assessment. But what I would say, a couple of things, is that generally speaking, one of the things that leads people to do it is a sense of humiliation and being very worried that their reputation is tarnished forever. You just don't get the impression that Epstein's bothered about all that, right? Because he'd already been in the public eye with a lot of terrible things. So that rules out one motivation, which is, my life's over because my reputation's in ruins. I just don't get the feeling he'd have been motivated by that, because I just don't think he cared. And so there's that thing.
And also he'd gone through the thing and he hadn't been humiliated. I mean, he still was having all sorts of people who were matey with him.
Yeah. And the other thing is that people who get depressed and suicidal and hopeless and despairing are often ruminating a lot and thinking about themselves and feeling sorry for themselves. So they're often quite sensitive, thoughtful people, if you see what I mean, introverts. You just don't get the feeling that Epstein was that kind of chap, that he was a very thoughtful person about very much at all, really.
No,
and a bit Teflon, a bit oblivious.
He'd come through so much.
I don't know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he'd come through so much. So, I think he was a narcissist, and he just couldn't see, and I think this is one of the problems with Andrew. He can't see anything except from his own perspective.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, I think he would have done what was in his own self-interest.
Okay.
And suicide probably isn't that.
Yeah, okay. One final argument, though, before we move on, and speaking as a psychiatrist now, thinking about this, if he was there's a controversy over the diagnosis, a sex addict, right? If he had a compulsive need for sex, a bit like an alcoholic or a drug addict, being in prison would have been very difficult for him, right? So maybe I'm just clutching at straws now, I'm just thinking about this in terms of psychiatrists. Even if he knew he was going to get out, maybe he just couldn't cope day after day without getting laid because he was compulsive about it. Maybe that drove him to it. I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, I mean, he had the girls were brought to him really through Ghislaine.
Yeah.
As you say, he couldn't really pick them up himself.
Right.
And Ghislaine was off the picture and had been off the picture for a while. So in some ways, he hadn't been having girls supplied to him for a while.
Okay, good counter argument.
So I don't know. I mean, he didn't have anyone else. I mean, well, he did have other people. There's one called Sarah Kellen who was supposed to be doing it. So, but I'm not sure that was enough of a factor.
Yes, I agree. It's arguable. Okay.